Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about variable prototyping, specifically string variable and Boolean variables. If you don't know what variables are and you want to get a simple overview, I'll link the Figma page down below. But I decided to create this video to show you my experience with playing with variables. So today we're going to look at creating this login screen. The two key benefits of variables is we can reduce the amount of elements or screens we need to create, but also we can make more advanced prototypes. So I'm going to go ahead and select on this element here. And let me show you one of the interactions. So on the top, this is how we activate the interaction. So we've got to click on this element, and this is what we want it to do. So I'm going to just press this plus to show you what actions we can create. We can see there are some that have always been there. So navigating to a different frame, we might want to change a variant in the component set. So this component set is the thing bounded by these purple dashes. We can go back to the frame we were on, and we can see two new things we can do here. So the first new action is set variable, which means when I click on this element, I want the variable to change to this new result. The second action is conditional. So I want this variable to change only when the condition is met. Otherwise, I want it to do this instead. So those are the two ways that we can make prototypes more advanced. Before we get into the exercise, I wanted to explain my thought process around what I made a variant in a component set versus what I wanted to control using variables. So I've watched a lot of videos, no one really explains it, but this is my take on it. If you have a different opinion, leave it in the comments below and we can have a great discussion around it. So here you can see, firstly, these components are literally the same thing. All I've done is I've hidden the icon and I've changed the text. Another thing I've done is I've also created multiple variants where all I've done is change the text. So here you can see it's password, and this one is the exact same thing, except it has a different text here. So why did I decide to do this instead of creating a string variable or a text variable? The reason is I found it easier to manage, but also I don't think that's the point of variables. So if the component was to just change within itself, so, I just want this component to change this, and I want it to change this, and it's within its own ecosystem, I'd rather create it into one component set like this, where I can see the flow of the prototype with its arrows. So, I have this variant here, and when you click it, I want to change this. And when you click it, I want to change to this. And if you click it, I want to change to this. And there's no real need to jump back and forth. I find it more useful to manage, first off, and also when users jump onto my file, they can kind of see my thought process around how the prototype works. However, if I wanted the component or variant to affect a different variant, that's when variables is quite useful. Let me show you an example. So I'm going to go back to my prototype and I can do in-screen prototypes now. So you can just go here. Preview shortcut is shift space. So I'm going to use that shortcut, shift space, and here we have our prototype here. So one instance could be, so I click on it and it activates this field. So if I activate this password field, I actually want this field to close because nothing has been changed in this field. So you can see when I open it, it closes this one. And when I click here, it closes this one. However, if I add the text, which is the third variant, it doesn't close anymore. So here's an example of where variables is useful because I'm actually controlling something else by clicking this component. Another thing that is something we might want to consider is making things visible. So for example, let's say, I've added my username, I clicked on the password, but I haven't typed anything and I try to log on. I can now show error messages like that. And again, by clicking on this component, I've actually affected this component, which is I've turned it visible. So here's another instance where you might want to create a variable. So let me show you my variables and how I created this. So you want to hit escape, make sure you're not selecting anything, go to your design tab on the right, and you can see your local variables here. And the reason mine is bold is because I have variables created. If you haven't, yours would look of this style, which is like grayed out. So we can go and open our variables. Here is our variables modal. On the left, we can see the list of variables that we've created, and we have a total of 7. We have the name of our variables. So each variable has a name and it has an icon to indicate what type of variable it is. And we also have the default state, or what we want that value to show when we first open the prototype. And this is just creating variables. So the way that variables work is you create them and then you associate it with a component. So if you were to create a variable, you can just click on this button and you can see there are 4 types: color, number, string, and Boolean. So I'm just going to focus on these 2 today. So string, there are 2 use cases. The first one is changing the text. So you can see here, I've used a string variable for the error text. So what that means is, I want this error message to say this, but if my conditions change, I actually want the error text to say something else. So that's one use case for the string variable. The second use case is to change the variance. So the way that you do that is you need this value to match the layer name. So here in my password component set, I have 5 variants and their names are default, active, input, input2, and reveal. And all I need to do is, before I connect this variable to this component set, I need to make sure that this name is one of these names. So you can see it's default and default. And if I was to change it, 1, 2, 3, obviously it's now not connected or not associated. So this variable doesn't work anymore. Go ahead and go back to default. So I have some colors, and there is a difference between creating variable colors versus style colors, which I'll create a video for in the future. So look out for that. But the last thing I want to talk about is Boolean variables. So again, we have string and Boolean, and Boolean just means true or false, yes or no. So the most common use case for Boolean is to turn a layer on and off. So from visible to invisible. And we can use that for the error message. So why do we want that? It's because when the conditions are met, we don't really need to show the error message, so we can have it off. But when they're not met, we want it to be on. So we want it to be true. And we can go ahead and control our variables here. So you can see here in my artboard, because it's associated, I can also control it within here. And the last thing you want to know, which for some reason no one talks about, but I think it's quite obvious now that I know it, is that when you use a variable prototyping, it only can associate with variable names here. So I'm going to power through this, but we're going to create our field component sets. So the first thing we want to do is we want to build our first default state. So we want to hit T for text, and let's just call it form field. No, we don't want to call it that. Let's call it field text actually. And for the settings, we have Helvetica New, light, 16 is the font size, and the line height is 24. And we want one of these icons, but we need it to be a component so we can change it from one to the other. So what we can do is we want to go select all these, and in here where the components is, we can go create component set. So we want this component set to be called icon, and we want to control these states. So we can go here. Currently it's A and this one's B, but if they're the same name, we might get this warning here, which says, it doesn't work because the names are the same. So we can go here and we want to change this. So we need to make sure it says property1 equals, and we can call this visible. And this, you know, if you were to just type in invisible here, you're going to break it. It's going to say this layer has an invalid name because we need to define this property1. So we go back here. Property1 equals invisible. And now it works. But we don't like this word property1 here. We can go click on this component set. And instead of property1, we want to edit this property and call it state. So we can see our states visible and invisible. So let's go ahead and copy this out. So I'm just holding the Option key. And now let's create our first field. And we can do that by using Auto Layout, our favorite. So Auto Layout here, we can press plus, or we can press Shift A. So again, Auto Layout controls spacing between elements and padding. So currently we don't want any spacing, so let's just make it 0. And we want this to be fixed. So we always want this field to be 400. So for the horizontal padding, we'll have it at, what do we want it at? 16. And then the vertical, we'll have it at 12. And then let's add a fill so we can see what it looks like. And for the radius or radii, we want it to be 8. And the way that we fix this is because there's more space in here, we can make this fill up the space. So that pushes that icon to the far right. So instead of hug, we want it to be fill and take up as much space as possible. And maybe we want to add a stroke. Okay, here is our first field. I don't want to make it into a component yet because it's not done. We need to add that label. If you know anything about Smart Animate, the way that Smart Animate works is we want to make sure that we have elements with the same name, and that will allow Figma to connect those elements and create this smooth animation. So we're going to do the second one first, and then we'll work out how to fix it. So now we're going to create this label up to the top left. I'm going to press T for text, and I'm going to type in a label. I'm going to select the text and now change the size. I think I'm going to go with 10. And the line height we can also have as 10. And we actually want to block out some of that line so it doesn't look like this. What would I do? What would I do? I'm going to add Auto Layout. So Shift A again. And so the space between elements doesn't really matter because there's only one element. But for the padding, let's just do 4. I'm going to press Tab to jump to the next one, press 4. Add a field. And now it's really important that we name this correctly. So let's call it label. So we can bring it in here. And we want it up there, but because there's auto layout, we can't really break the auto layout except if we use absolute position. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to make sure that this text aligns pretty well like that. Really don't need that padding. Let's just make it 0. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yep, that looks pretty good. Yes, so in the first one, okay, so it's gone out. So let's bring it back in, absolute positioning. The way that we keep it in the frame, so every time you drag something, it might want to exit the frame. You can hold the space bar and that keeps it within the layer it's in, so it doesn't go out. So let's do that. And the reason I want to do that is so that the bounding box is still that field and it kind of ignores that the fact that it sticks out. So we want to go ahead and bring that over here. So let's go copy and paste. But we want the label to come from here. So what do we want to do? Let's bring the text to be the same as this one. So it was 16 and 24. So for this field text, we might want to make it invisible first. So we can just press 0 twice. So that opacity is set to 0. But for now, let's keep it at 100. And we want to make sure that it's perfectly aligned. So I'm just going to press F and I'm going to press 5 to make it half opacity. So now it's aligned to the same spot. I can go ahead and change this word back to label. I'm going to select this field. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to select this label, and to make it 100, it's just 10. So opacity set to 100. So here we go. We've created our 2 components here. So is that enough? Yes, 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 yes. Let's call this one default, and we will call this one active. Yes, so we can go ahead now, and we want to make them into a component set as well. Create component set. So a thing I like to do is I like to have the component sets be auto layered as well, just so it's easier to manage. And I want to make 3 more. So I can go copy, paste 3 times. Oh, I gotta do it slowly. Okay, so we got our 5 components here, and I want to make the username one over here. So let me just go ahead and delete these 2. And we can delete these icons. We don't need them. So for the label, we want it to say username. And I'm just going to copy. And to copy the text without, if I just do regular Command V, it copies that sizing. But if I want to copy the text but not the properties, I can just go Command Shift V. So Command Shift V. You can do that here as well. So here I want to call this username as well. So that's the default text. And here the German boy. Cool. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So let's just do password first. And now that I look at it, I actually want this to be sentence case. I think that looks better. Let's do that. So should that start? So I'm going to copy this, and again, Command Shift V. I'm going to do it for all of these. This one might say password. This one is the first user input, so I'm going to have 4 stars. The real password has 10 stars, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when the password is revealed, I'm going to write secret ! 2, 3, 4. Okay, so by default, so when it's invisible, I want to show the visible icon, and when it's visible, I need to show the invisible icon. So you're prompting the user to change it. So I can go ahead, click on this icon here, and I'm going to change it to invisible. And there you have it. You have the component sets. So remember in our prototype, we also had a line for error text. So I'm going to go ahead and create another line. So text, make sure it's the same size. Yep, I want it the same size. And I'm just going to write error message. Maybe not capital M. Let's do lower M, sentence case here. And we want to make this red. Okay, maybe it's time to create our color variables. So again, make sure we press escape, nothing selected. We'll go to our local variables. So let's create some variables. So I'm going to create, let's create a few colors first. So we go red. Light gray here, dark gray, and black. I'm just going to use 2. What do I want to use? 9, maybe E here, red. I don't know what the code is for red. Yeah, or you can just type in red. And let's now fix our colors. So you can see in the styles panel, I can also see my variable colors. So we've got red here. So this one, we might want everything to be the black. So every time something's been input, everything's black. So I'm going to select these three. And then in my selection colors, I'm just going to go black and black. Okay. What do I want to do for this one? I want to do the same thing, black, black, but maybe because nothing's changed for these two, I am going to make it dark gray just to indicate it's not been touched. Maybe this icon also needs to be dark gray. So I'm just clicking this, change it to dark gray. And then for this one, let's just make it light gray to indicate that it's inactive. Maybe you want the border to be light, but these things can be dark gray. Yeah, no, that looks a bit whack. Let's change these strokes to be dark gray. Yes, 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 this looks better. Okay, we've played with our colors. Now let's change some more variables. Let's add some variables. Okay, so we go to our local variables and we want to add two more for, let's do the error message first because that's easy. So we want to create Boolean. So let's just say error visibility. You know, you can call it whatever you want. And then, so let's just have it on for now so we can see it. And then we want a string, so error message. Message, right? So you know it's truly associated when the text changes to string value and the text is on. So of course it's on. So I'm just gonna get out of that. Click on the text. So you want to find this hexagon icon, apply variable. So in the text section, if I click on this, I can see all my string variables. So I want to click it to error message, and you can see the text is now changed to string value. So again, if I was to go to local variables and I change this to say error 123, that's how I know it's connected. So this has been connected now, and now we got to connect this error visibility. So this one's really hard to find, but it's in the layers panel. So there's no hexagon icon for some reason. Hopefully they changed that. But what you want to do is go to this eye and go right click. And now you see error visibility. So you can see it's connected because it has this pill, which shows you which variable is connected to. And again, if I go to here, I can turn it on and off. So I want to now create a variable to control these variants. So we're going to call this one password, and we can call this one username. So we go back to our variables and we want to create two more string variables. So I'm going to go like that. And we want to call this one password, and we can call this one username. And we want to make sure these names are correct. So let's just minimize these. So we have one called default, one called active, one called, let's just call this one input. I think is what I called it before. So input. And again, we can go ahead, click on the component set, and we'll change this word to be state. That's probably easier to use. And now let's check this one. So we're going to minimize these. Oh, so you can see the name has been duplicated, which is why we have this error. So we'll go for this one, and we're going to change this to read input 1. This one we can be input 2. Oops, input 2. And this one is called visible. And again, let's just change this to be called state, and we can see ordering of this. We can drag and drop, I think. So we want input 1 to be first, and this doesn't really affect much, but it just changes the way of things, how things are ordered when we want to control something. So we've got default active, input visible. Yep. And then this one, let's just see the ordering. So I think it's by alphabetical order, but let's just move this to the top. We want default to be the first state that we can see, and let's close that. So now we've checked the names. Let's go back to here. We want the value to be default. I don't know if the capital matters, but I'm just going to do that because it works. And I'm going to copy them now. So there we have it. We have all our variables made. Now let's go bring them into the prototype, into our frame, and then start connecting these variables together. Okay, so we have the screens that we had before. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first one. So password, I'm just going to copy. And then here, I'm just going to go paste to replace. So I'm going to bring it in here. Same with the username, copy, paste to replace. And then this new text that we've made. So you can see, you can also apply variables to elements that are not components. So that also works. And I'm going to go copy. And I'm going to paste to replace. So you can see it's kept all those variables. Maybe the first thing we want to do is get this working. So let's see if we want to change the spacing. No, I think it's fine, actually. Let's go to these components. So we want to go to the prototype tab. And we want this to move to this one on click. So we can go here, press this plus button, click drag, and we see this arrow, and we can just drag it to this. So this is what happens by default, but we want to make it read on click. So that's how we want the interaction to happen. And what we want it to do is we want it to change to this variant. Very good. So the state is changed to active from default. And we want it to be smart animate. So what that means is because these layers are called the same, that should look like it's moving up and ease out 300 milliseconds. So let's check that out. Again, we can do preview, or we can press shift space here. I'll press shift space and we can see this preview is just loading. We'll just let it run. I think it's because it's the first time I've used it. And so we fixed the password. So if I click it, it should transform to this variant. Yep, so you can see how it moves smoothly. And again, the way that we connect things is by making sure the layer name is the same. So let's make sure, yep, so this is called label, and this one should be also called label, correct. Okay, so let's finalize our connection. So again, we want this one to do the same thing. On click, change to the state input 1, smart animate again. And this one last time, on click, change the state input 2. Yep. So here we want it to only change when we press this icon. So when we do this, it's saying that you can click anywhere within the frame. What we want to do instead is we want to click on this icon. So only the icon is selected. And when you select on this icon, we can go here on click, change to state visible. And then this one, oops, this icon again. When you click on this one, we want to go back and change to this state. So there we have it. We have a very simple connections made. And we'll just do the same for this one. So this, drag it down, on click, change to state active, and then this, on click, change to state input. So let's just do one more preview. So shift space. So for the username, it should go 1, 2, 3. So username, click, yep. The jump boy, yep. And then the password, there should be 1, 2, 3 clicks, and then this icon should toggle between. So we've got 1, 2, 3 clicks and the icon toggles between. Perfect. So now let's use our variables to create more advanced actions. So the first variable action that we want to create, and the reason why, let's just go back here. The reason why we created these is we want to read the state it's on to control the action, right? So the first action that we want to create is if we were to activate one field, so let's say the password field, but the other field is not being used, we want to close it up and go back to this one. Sounds very complex, but once you wrap your head around it, it's quite straightforward. So let's go to prototype and let's control this action. So on click, we want it to change to this one, which is what we have. But we want to have a condition that if it's not on the third one, we want it to move back to state number 1. So let's close this. We want to add a conditional action. So if username, so let's go here, let's see what we can select. So if username equals to this layer, so what do we have it? So we have default active input. So if it's currently on active, and the way that we write active for any string variable, we need it in quotation marks. So it is the 2 apostrophe looking things. So if it equals to active, then what we want to do. So we don't want to do change. So change can only affect within the component set, but we're affecting something outside of the component set. So we want to go set variable, and it can find any variable. So we want to set the variable username to quotation mark default. So that's the state name, default, or else action. So we don't really need it to do anything else. We just want it to be so that if it's on active, which is this one, we want it to close it up. So let's do the same one for here. Let's go on this one. Let's just minimize this. Again, same thing, conditional. If password is equal to quotation marks active, then we want to set the variable password to default. Yeah, make sure the text is correct in quotation marks. And if it's not correct, it will just tell you no, it has this annoying error thing. It doesn't tell you how to fix it. It just tells you it's wrong. So the fact that it allows me to do this means we're possibly correct. So let's just get out of this and let's preview again. So shift space. So we can see we've opened it. And now if I open this one should close. No, it is not working. And do you know why? Wow, I just realized why. It's because we created these variables, but we actually never associated it with these component sets. So that was my mistake. So the way that we associate it is we go to our frame. We don't associate it here. We associate it in the component itself. So with this component here, you can see the current state is default. We actually want to go to this hexagon icon, assign variable ... Okay, we want to assign it to username. And then for this one, we want to assign it to password. And let's just attach. So if I assign it to error message, what happens? It has this line thing here. Variable value doesn't map to variant. So this is what I said before. If you have a string variable, but the value that you've put there, so let's just go here. So the value that you put here, if it doesn't align with any of these names, then you've kind of broken that variable, which is why it has that line here. It says it doesn't like it. However, if we just go to password, yep, it likes it. So let's test it again. So shift space. So I've opened it. Now if I open this one, that should close. Perfect. And the animation is not smooth. It's kind of bugging me, but I don't think you can do anything about it. So yeah, yep. So that works. Boom, boom, boom. Very nice. But if we go to the third state, that condition no longer applies. So yep, it doesn't close. So again, just to recap, let's just go back to this prototype. We can see that we've added that condition here. But unlike this one, where we can actually control what type of animation that we have, so we have the smart animate on to make it really smooth, we have it on ease out. On this animation, there's no way we can actually control what type of animation it is. So that's why it has that kind of clunky effect. But that's okay. We're using Figma to communicate ideas, not to showcase the real animation. So now that we've got that done, the next thing we want to do is configure this login button. So we have our error message here. We're not going to make the same mistake. We're going to check that it's associated. Yep. So we got the layer visibility associated and we have the text associated. Perfect. Okay. For this, we're going to change these frame names. So let's just call this start and let's call this end. Perfect. So this time, instead of dragging to create those prototype links, we're just going to click on this button here. So it's called log on. I'm going to go prototype. And I don't know what this is. So let's just get rid of that. Oh, that's what I had before. So I'm going to start from scratch. So we're going to add a new interaction on click. So we got to think about, okay, what do we want to happen in this case? So in this example, we have 3 things that needs to happen. And they all have conditions. So I need 3 conditions, which I'll add 3 actions here. But the first one is if everything is correct, then I want it to move to the success page. If they press login, but nothing's been entered, I should have a message that says we need a password here. If they get to this state where the password is wrong, the message should change. So there are 3 interactions that we would create. So I'm going to press plus for the first one. So the first one is, let's say the user forgot to enter something and they tried to log on. So how do we do this? We want that to apply only to these 2 states, this one and this one. So we can go here and we can go, if the password equals to, so there's 2 equals to default. Okay, let's just do the capital just in case. And let's go or. So you know it is a proper equation when it goes pink. So if it equals default, which is this one, or we got to write it again, or if password equals to active, what do we want to happen? Okay, what do we want to happen? So if it's these 2, then we want this to turn on. So we want to set a variable. We want this error visibility to be true. So true means on. What else do we want to do? So we actually want to add another action within this condition. So what we can do is we can press plus. I don't know how to actually, or maybe it's this, add nested action. Yes. We want to set the variable error message to, what do we want it to say? Now we can make it say, you need to enter a password. Okay, that's okay. Let's just do that. So again, to recap, if the condition is true, so if these things are true, so the password equals this one, default state, or the password equals the active state, then we want to turn the error message on and we want it to change to this. How do I show you? Yeah, we want the message to say you need to enter a password. Otherwise, we want something else to happen. And we can't use else in this instance because there are 3 scenarios. So the way that this works is it reads the priority from top to bottom. But also, if there are multiple else's, then how does it know which else to do first? So I'd rather just leave this blank. Let's add another one. So conditional again. So if password equals to input1, which is this one, what do we want to happen? We want to set the variable error visibility to be true. And let's add another one. And we want to set the variable error message to say something else. What do we want it to say? We want it to say, sorry, your password is incorrect. Quotation marks. Okay, so that's this new error message. And you can see what's going to happen for the next one. Same thing, conditional. So it could be this or this. So what is this called? Visible. This is called visible, and this is called input2. So let's go back to this, and we can shortcut it by clicking on this icon. Let's drag it up here. So we got our first conditional, we got our second conditional, our last one. If password equals to input2, or if password equals to visible, yeah, what do we want to happen? We want to set the variable error visibility to be false, so we want to hide it. And the reason why we're doing this is if the error message is on, we need a way to get rid of it. So we can make it false. And what's the next thing we want to do? We want to navigate to this next frame. So we go navigate to end. So this is why we needed to change the frame name so we can find it. So it's called end. And let's do, yep, we can do instant. It's fine. Doesn't really matter. So we got our 3 conditions. So if we've done that correctly, now if we go shift space, we can see the errors. Okay, we can't really see it because it's currently on. So let's just go back to our design. And because it's associated, I can make the default state off, so false. So shift space again. So let's say, yep, I put in my username and I've forgotten to put the password, and I press log on. You need to enter a password. Some missing fonts were replaced. Very interesting. Don't know why that is. But we'll just move on. Let's say we've opened it and we have it on this. So we think that's our password, and we're going to press log on again. Sorry, your password is incorrect. Very good. That's exactly what we wanted to say. And then let's say we jumped in, we check our password. Yep. And we're happy with that. And we hit log on. Success. So there you have it. We have connected different types of string variables and Boolean variables to create this prototype. Hopefully this was a useful video. I literally spent about 6 hours trying to wrap my head around variable prototyping. And there are a lot of videos explaining how to do it, but none really explaining why you should do things certain ways and how to get things to work well. So hopefully I've explained it in detail. If you need any other problem solving on how to get these variables to work, then leave them in the comment below and I'll have a look and try to work it out with you. But also, I just want to re-emphasize Figma is a communication tool. We don't need to create these very intense prototypes if we don't have to. So yes, it's fun to learn. Do we need it? Maybe not. But go forth and conquer. I wish you all the best. But anyways, that's all for now. Stay hydrated, take a break, rest your eyes, and I'll see you all next time.